So, if you have been watching me, you know that the main games that I talk about are Honkai, Star Rail, Final Fantasy XIV, and Baldur's Gate 3. I was attempting an honor run in Baldur's Gate 3 for a while, to the point that I was getting frustrated. I was slowly progressing and making a good effort, and it became at some point less of a challenge and more a speed run. I wasn't trying to experience the game in a new way, or trying to do new romances of friendships. I did attempt to romance the star in, but that run ended before I could really get to anywhere with him. Now I have probably gone too far without explaining what Baldur's Gate 3 is, what an honor run is. So Baldur's Gate 3 is the third installment of the Baldur's Gate series, and the many games that is played in the Dungeons and Dragons world. Baldur's Gate 3 follows the 5th edition rule set, but also changes up some things for video game purposes. Now, what is honor mode? Is it the hardest mode that the game offers, or is it just a challenge mode, so the bragging rights? Basically both of those. It also doesn't really feel like it. The reason I say that is because it is the base difficulty with more disadvantages against you, and also a single life feature. Single life feature meaning that if your party dies, then the run is over. Theoretically, you can continue a run, but it'll be nullified as an honor run, and will only count as a tactician run. Now, what does honor run hold in terms of difficulty? There is only one save file, so no multiple to try to save scum and get the best type of dice roll. NPCs are more keen to your sneaky attempts, so if you try to pick someone's pockets, they will basically question you and may throw you in jail. Certain bosses have legendary actions that make the fights more challenging. Most of the actions just boil down to kill the one with the action as quick as possible to have an easier time, which makes a lot of bosses feel like a DPS check. Also, the type of class you will run will also help with how fast you are able to get through the first act of the game. Now, the hardest part for me, getting through the tutorial area. Now, I mean the ship, sadly. There's an area after you get off where you have to fight some intellect devourers, which are brains with legs. In the base difficulty, they can only use melee moves and are easy to decommission with ranged attacks as they attempt to come close. In honor mode, they are given a ranged psychic attack that packs a punch that can easily end your run if you don't position right. Now let's backtrack and talk about my experience with Baldur's Gate, because I feel like I need to talk about my experience with the previous games. Character building in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are great, but I probably wouldn't go back to it because it is dated at this point. And there's no reason to go back to the previous games unless you want to get to know some of the older characters and feel the nostalgia when you see them again with their updated graphics. Did I like both games? Well, that is kind of maybe, because while I did enjoy the characters and the storytelling, it was still an older D&D game. I didn't play the same race and class if I can when it comes to D&D based games, which is a half-orc if the game has one, and usually a druid class, which I tend to always play wrong since I rather just stay in wild shape and not have to really try to be a spellcaster. Now, the original games were kind of racist when it comes to the races because a lot of the classes were race locks, which is rarely a thing in D&D/gaming at this point. Half orcs, which are half human, half orc, couldn't be any class that required intelligence since half orcs were seemed similar to their orc counterparts, which were dull and only thing they could do was fight and not really think up schemes. Or you can play on the shamans. The age old, you can't put stats in both intelligence and strength. You have to choose one. So it'd probably be hard for anyone to jump into the earlier games because there isn't as much creativity when it comes to character customization. Like I said, there isn't really any reason to play the previous games since the storyline is completely different. Villains can be any more different. You also only have one background, so it's origin stories, and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 go hand in hand. So you play the same character. Which is why I went for an origin story where I played bg3 for the first time, and it was the best decision I made. It allowed me to play the game like 3 was a continuation of Baldur's Gate 2. I beat Baldur's Gate 3 a few times before even ever considering doing on the run. And I truthfully never thought to really start a run because I don't do challenge runs. I always pick normal difficulties because I want to see how hard the game is at the intended difficulty. Well, intended for most games. I had to think about what class to play and what race would be best for me to choose. I picked Rogue, mainly because sneak attack becomes broken down the road. I picked Drow because it makes getting to the Goblin camp very easy, even if every other race just believes you are evil. It definitely isn't because I always pick Lothborn Drow. Nope, just because I picked Drow. I believe it took me 3 runs so I was able to get past the first act. Oh, also I named my character May Die and number. Mainly so I could number which run I was on. So the third run was May Die 3. And I was doing good to a point, and I say to a point because I realized that the best way for me to fight was ranged. I also had to deal with my teammates dying, and the only way I was able to live was to run away every time and have wood to resurrect them if they were too far for me to pick them up. It was the worst thing because I was trying to rush level 4, so that way I had enough power for my sneak attack to do enough damage to one-shot enemies or get close enough to two-shot. That is the goal for sneak attack builds. Get a crit so you can one-shot. Hopefully you can attack the next enemy to not alert everyone. I have dealt with having to be a sneak attacker with my solo playthrough, which I haven't finished because I started playing other playthroughs. Run for my thief failed because I couldn't sneak at a certain point during the second act boss fight, and everyone was down. After I tried many different builds against the second act final boss, kept failing because I couldn't immediately skip the first phase. Would have easily downed the boss if I didn't have to wait resources on another phase, but because I was so tunnel visioned, I kept missing the permission to do that. I always skip the first phase every one of my runs, for some reason not on my other run. So now you may all be wondering what class I beat this boss with, and I have to say it was Paladin, but the run itself was invalid. So after realizing that after I died in the third act, decided to go full degen and download mods. How was that run invalid? Well, I died on the ship, and I thought I said end the run, but apparently just continued it after my death and started a tactician run. But there is no actual way to know that you are in tactician run if you missed the disgrace screen. The main reason I didn't know was because my character was put right back before you had to do the fight to escape the ship. I thought they gave you a grace if you died before escaping the ship, since that is basically the tutorial, well, the start of the tutorial. That was most likely the dumbest start of my life, so I wasted hours in a run that wasn't valid. The plan was to get new spells, maybe look snazzy, while attempting a few more runs, but down the gear mod that truthfully kind of broke the game. So just to explain, I took my 8th run easily to 3rd act without much resistance. Now the broken gear I got was a sword that summoned a dragon, and well, it was usually a one-shot early on. Other gear I equipped was weapons that you wouldn't get till later on in the game that didn't really make a difference at that point. Now if you watch the I Beat Honor Run video, you'll probably know that the 8th run wasn't my final run. I ran into a boss in the 3rd act that explodes after a certain amount of health is lost, and then a DPS shuts after that point. Everyone had a disadvantage, kept missing, so we lost. The last run, I skipped that boss and just ran straight to the end game with my paladin. I also had to speedrun the epilogue because I heard of a lot of runs ending because of it. Even though I have the achievement for completing on a run, do I feel like the run itself is valid? Truthfully, no. I also feel like the game itself misses a lot when it comes to the 3rd act, when it comes to your growth in power. Yes, you get a good amount of gear that can amplify your power, but nothing really makes you feel more powerful than the level, and you get so much XP in the 3rd act after getting 12 that it feels like a spit in your face. I also know that Larian had a specific reason for not wanting to go past level 12, but also hurts when you have so much potential for a class after 12. Next video I plan to do is about a game that has a level 20 level cap, and that can make you feel like a god when you get that last level. But we'll leave that for the next video. Truthfully, I would still say my run was valid if I did it with the rest of my IV spells or just playing as in the race like I did with my Asamira race. But because I was able to have a dragon kind of killed any struggle that on the run was supposed to throw at me, it was a petty way of getting back at the game for making me struggle with the boss of the second act, even though I struggled because of my own stupidity. I'll admit that the only reason I died a lot to that boss was because I wanted to save persuasion checks for important and game saving moments. I didn't feel that boss was something I should waste time or real resources on. After I realized that I needed to stop being stuck in my ways, I was able to beat him. Even knowing all of this, I probably wouldn't do another on the run since it takes a good amount of time investment to try/complete multiple runs, and I'd rather spend that time playing other games. I probably would recommend on the run if you want a true challenge after patch 7 drops, because a lot of the bosses on the run will be reworked to a point and made harder. Now, you may think, oh, well, you probably wouldn't want to deal with a harder mode, so you couldn't beat the base on a mode, and you would be right. Truthfully, I only used the dragon when I felt that the boss fight would result in my death, but otherwise I was fighting my regular abilities to gain some honor for my dishonorable summon. I'll leave these challenge runs to the pros, and we'll just start playing fun normal modes since that is what I enjoy. I'm happy that there will be a mod mode implemented in the game come patch 7. On the run ended with May Not Die 9, and even they didn't have their cake and needed too, because even though they had a nice romance with Shadowheart, they didn't end the game with her, since they kept a promise to keep another companion alive and left with them. It was bittersweet to see them again, just to know we will be leaving again, but not everyone has a good ending. That'll be the end of this video, and next video will be on my favorite CRPG that I don't really play that much, and I'll explain that more in the next video, but that is for next time. My name is Only Incubus, and I'll see you next week. Later days.